Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 6 of Conversations with Dr. Westman. Today, we're going to be chatting about how to measure your success on a low-carb diet. But before we get going, something we need to just chat about. If you're on any medications for type 2 diabetes, hypertension, or any other metabolic-related illnesses, please be sure to contact your medical specialist or your primary care provider, because some of these medications may become too strong while on a low-carb program. Actually, quite incredible that a low-carb program or protocol can make your medications become too strong. Eric, what do you think?
Yes, and it's more powerful. Lifestyle, what you eat is more powerful than 10 medicines sometimes.
Right. So with that, we can kick it off today. So wanted to just ask, for people to measure their success along the way, what sort of measurements can people take, and what do you think about people measuring along the way to see their success?
Yeah, well, it's an individual thing. Some people want to measure, some people want me to measure for them. I think the first really question to answer is what success are you looking for? So not everyone uses the low-carb diet to lose weight, although most people do. That's how it's become popular. So if you're going to lose weight, then we're going to have to talk about how to measure weight and or other parameters. If you're going to do it to change a blood test, for example, then you're going to want to measure the blood tests as the outcome. If you're doing it to optimize your physical performance in some way, then we'll talk about those kinds of measures too. So the first question really is, what are you trying to accomplish by changing what you eat and doing a low-carb diet? Maybe we could start with the weight loss piece. Okay.
So what you would typically see in your clinic with someone coming in to measure their weight loss, how would you measure that, and how often would you measure that?
Yeah. Of course, the first thing to do is to get good education, good training in how to do this. And we have our own technique of very simple list of foods sort of thing to get started. So you want to make sure you're doing it right. But there's kind of a saying in our obesity medicine world where, if it's not working after a couple of weeks, it's not the right approach. So if you're, and remember that's a couple of weeks, and that would be for everyone. Most people will see some results in the first day or two. So let's take the best case scenario. You're cutting out the carbs, doing keto, low carb, and in that first day or two, the hunger should be gone or dramatically reduced so that you're only hungry at, a couple times a day. So the first thing to notice is the change in metabolism, that you've changed from eating carbs and burning carbs to not eating carbs and burning fat. And when you start burning fat, the hunger goes way down or is gone totally. So the first thing to measure actually isn't the scale, isn't the inches, it's how you feel. So the metabolic effects will dramatically reduce the hunger. The cravings should be gone in a day or two. If you're not eating a food anymore, you're not going to crave it. And okay, the bell-shaped curve is maybe out a week or two, worst case scenario. If someone is craving, it might take a week or two for it to totally go away, but you should notice the hunger going down and you're automatically eating less than you were before. So you can know in the first day or two that it's working. Now, if you're coming to me for weight loss, then yes, the weight will go down, and we typically see 1 to 2 pounds per week on average of weight loss. So we encourage measuring about once a week at home, not every day, not 5 times, 10 times a day, although some people want to do that. So the weekly average of weight going down is about 1 to 2 pounds per week, and you multiply that out, it's 4 to 8 pounds per month. or 50 to 100 pounds per year. No pills, no products. It's really just changing the food, which is pretty amazing. But the weight sometimes is misleading. There is a shift in weight, type of weight that can happen. So the water weight can go up, even though the fat weight has gone down, and you might be confused because you're doing everything right, hunger's gone, you're eating less, but the scale's not changing. And that's because the water weight went up. So at a clinic like mine, we have a special scale that separates out the water weight from the fat weight, and we can monitor that. But you can also notice by the puffiness of your fingers if your ring is tight now, or if you have a indentation of where the socks are at the top of the socks of your legs. That is also an indication of a little bit of fluid building up. So the weight is one parameter, and I know everyone focuses on that, but it's not always a perfect measure. So therefore, measuring your size is important as well. So when you come to our clinic, we take a tape measure and put it around the waist, and we do it in a very simple way, just at the level of the kind of the maximal girth, or the belly button, or umbilicus. Belly button is kind of a good spot. Even then, that's not perfect, but you want a program that changes things a lot. So a very small change in the measurement is not a big deal. So when you're losing 10, 20 inches at the waist, just because you're off a little bit where you measure is not such a big deal. So we do measure the waistline. Now, some people will measure the arms, the legs, so the upper arm, the thighs, and if you want to, you can, in addition to the belly. And you'll see sometimes that the arms change and the belly doesn't. Same with the weight. Sometimes the weight changes, but the measurements don't. And so that's part of the teaching that we do, is that you don't expect all of the parameters to get better all of the time. Some of them might change and others don't. And even if you're a daily get on the scale kind of person, you're going to notice that the weight goes up some days. And that we think is a water weight fluctuation. So don't get discouraged or bail out if there are small changes in any of these measurements. But so these are kind of the weight loss measurements that we have, the tools. If someone comes to me, they're on medications, I need to worry about those, especially fluid pills, and that have to do with swelling in the ankles, and I'll check for leg swelling every time someone comes back. But if you're not otherwise, if you're not sick, you're not on medications, these are relatively minor things that you don't have to worry about. The amazing thing is that for most people, it's automatic. I mean, you really don't have to measure much. Finally, if I, and I've had to do this in the shutdown we've had, sometimes the only measurement we have is how the clothes feel. So I'll ask, do the clothes feel different? Not leading the witness, so to speak. I won't say, so the clothes bigger, it feel looser? No, I'll just say, how do the clothes feel? Does it feel different? And most people will acknowledge, yeah, the clothes are falling off, they're getting baggy, my shirts are getting longer, my pants are falling down, and that's actually a better indicator than the waistline, because it measures all sorts of places all over the body. Right. So the weight, total weight, and then the fat weight, water weight, with a body composition scale if you can, inches, belly at a minimum, but arms and legs, neck even can be used for measurements. And then the checking for fluid is something I'll do with someone who has other health problems. The hunger going away is the first thing that you'll notice. And really, for most people, it's just automatic. It reminds me of when I got into this 22 years ago. Two of my patients did this on their own. Now, I didn't tell them what to do, and I didn't even know what the diet was. And I thought to myself, these two people came through my office, did it on their own. They didn't need a doctor. They didn't need special monitoring. They just read a book, so that if this was safe, so many people could do this on their own. How huge would that be? And so now 20 years later, with the miles and miles of research that's been done and following people, it is safe. And so using these simple tools of measurements, so many people can do it on their own. It's a pretty exciting thing to be able to teach. I'm now thinking of probably one of the most common contextualization, putting it into perspective, things that I do about weight loss is the amount of weight. So that 1 to 2 pounds per week it may seem excruciatingly slow. And so just about everyone comes back wanting it to happen faster. And, I understand that. There are lots of different ways, fast and slow, and we believe this is the healthiest way to lose weight, is to do it relatively slow, but it's, you're not adding pills and products. But so if you're not hitting that 2 pounds per week of weight loss, it's okay. Remember, it's a range of 1 pound to 2 pounds per week. And then there are some people who are outside that range. So if someone comes to me, they haven't lost weight for 10 years, and now they're losing half a pound a week, I'm happy. Because that person's metabolism was, stuck for so long, they're finally losing weight at a rate that's outside what I normally see. But and then medications will will reduce the rate of speed of weight loss, and most people understand that and are just happy to be losing weight if you're at that stage. Okay, so looping back, yes, some people do lose 5 to 10 pounds in the first 2 weeks, and the larger you are, the more you'll lose on average. And then in general, men lose faster than women, much to the dismay of many women who come back to me if a couple does it together. But not to worry, it's still going to work, but it might not. There are a lot of individual differences between genders and sizes and age. So the older you are, the slower it tends to be. So I turn that around and say, do it now, because you're never going to be younger, right? We can't change the direction of age. But these are pretty simple tools to measure. If you're just doing it for weight loss, the clinic can be helpful, but you can do a lot of these measurements on your own.
What about blood tests like HbA1c for measuring pre-diabetes or diabetes, or fasting insulin, your blood lipid profile? What about measuring these type of metrics to understand the success along the way?
Yeah, so for general health purposes, we'll measure all of those things. And the good news is just about all of those things get better. It's not necessary. Well, I wouldn't say it's essential to measure all of the blood tests, because I'm pretty confident that they're going to be better. But a lot of people want them measured and like to see the numbers rather than just take my word for it. In our area, other doctors are happy and generally will be doing those tests at an annual physical, for example. So I sometimes will add in certain blood tests, but I don't really measure much beyond what a doctor normally would do. We're kind of pushing the frontier on the glucose and insulin and inflammatory markers and the kind of biohacking sort of world. I'm not yet convinced that I can make you live longer and be healthier by monitoring some very small thing and giving you a supplement or a specific advice. Although I'm excited to see that these things might be possible. We kind of have this pendulum of people thinking that they can biohack and measure all these things and manipulate the vitamin levels and all. And I'm not quite sure that that's really worth the effort. But you're right on that the old way was kind of to be worried about cholesterol. The new way, well, it's always been there, it just wasn't emphasized, was that the blood glucose and insulin markers are more important. So I want to get the glucose, insulin resistance. It's related to weight. It's related to what you eat. I want to get that perfect. And I don't care so much about the cholesterol level. And I know it gets us into hot water with doctors who believe that cholesterol is the most important thing, and then don't even address the diet at all, which
Right, I got you. So something else that's pretty difficult for a lot of people that might not be able to come and see, let's say, yourself or other low carb doctors is how would you recommend that people can maximize their success with their own doctor? Because a lot of the times they tell their doctor that they'd like to embark on a low carb or a keto type of lifestyle, and their doctors are horrified and shocked and they don't really believe in it. So how does one maximize their success that they're going to have with their primary care doctor?
Yeah, I started as a general internist or a primary care doctor. So I did that for 10 years within the Veterans Affairs system in the United States. It's a kind of a HMO, or it's the healthcare system for the military and veterans. And there are certain things you think about as a primary care provider or as a generalist. You think about vaccines and screening tests and all these things. Have you had the skin screening, the colonoscopies, the cancer screening, that sort of thing? I don't do that anymore. So as a specialist, I've learned that, there's so many hours or minutes hours in a day, minutes in a meeting so I focus really on the food and the health, metabolic health, and don't do what a lot of the primary care providers still do. What their job really is to help prevent and do all of these other things. Depending on the doctor and the doctor's receptivity to learn, I think you can just kind of say you're doing a Mediterranean diet. That's kind of a little bit of a joke, but it's true. There are parts of the Mediterranean basin that basically don't eat many carbs. Some areas do. Nobody can really define what a Mediterranean diet, but it smooths the wheels, so to speak, because every doctor kind of has been taught that a Mediterranean diet is best. Now, I use that kind of tongue-in-cheek because we don't know that the Mediterranean diet is best, but at least doctors don't give you pushback about it. So you may or may not want to ask. We call this now keto-friendly doctors. It's kind of a term where people be asking me for a referral to a keto-friendly doctor. One that just won't give you a hard time about it is probably a great find if you can find a doctor like that. And there are a growing number of lists where doctors have said, I'm keto-friendly. Whether they use it for you personally or not is a different issue, because it does take some time to do the teaching and all. But so you might say, can we agree to disagree on the food that I'm eating? Everything else is looking great. Can you measure what you would normally measure in terms of health? And most doctors will make that compromise. Or I've heard don't tell me what you're doing. You've lost all this weight. You don't have diabetes or not on medications anymore, but don't tell me what you're doing. So that there's this irrational fear still among some doctors that if they advocate or promote or endorse or even allow low carb, high fat, or keto diet, that they're somehow going outside the rules. Actually, I think there are some health systems today, sadly, where it is outside the rule. So in that case, the doctors just don't write it in the chart, and then they're fine. So it's if you're really for the doctors, if you're really on the side of the patient getting better, even if it's outside your own little health system's guideline, why wouldn't you allow that person to do it, and you just don't write it down?
Right.
But more and more, it's compared to 10 years ago, a lot more endorsement and approvals. The Obesity Medicine Association national group in the U.S. has endorsed low-carb keto diets. The American Diabetes Association supported the low-carb diet in their guideline that came out in a paper. So more and more these organizations are coming online. And that's important because some doctors have to wait for a guideline or organization to endorse it, especially if they're going outside their own health systems guideline. So it's fascinating because you might have a national guideline, international one, but if there's a local health system that's created their own, many doctors feel obliged, well, their paycheck may be obligated to follow a local guideline. And so through the years, we've helped systems change guidelines, update them, make sure they know the latest information from other organizations. And, things are changing, but if your doctor isn't open to it and, if they're a great doctor for all the other things, great. But if they're not, hopefully you're able to choose your doctor and you find another one.
Right.
But that's kind of the worst. I think a lot of people will be open to learn, especially if the patient is doing better. But that's not always the case.
Oh, we've got to try to figure out a way of getting a couple of thousand Eric Westmans around the country, right?
Well, it's not me, it's the method, right?
Oh.
I mean, I deliver the message, but it's the message and the method, which it speaks to, the way I learned about this is two people did it without me, right? So if it's the ability to, the credibility, the research that's been done, that's great. But once I get through that, people are doing this on their own. It's not me, right? And actually, the Obesity Medicine Association is a large group in the U.S., a couple thousand doctors and mid-level providers, nurse practitioners, PAs, and we have taught the low-carb keto diet at the Obesity Medicine Association for about 10 years now. So there are a growing number of doctors who use it, there are some efforts to get these doctors together. An organization is just in infancy to bring practitioners together. We've all, you and I have talked about how ADAPT might be able to teach doctors how to do it. Although I think there's a huge effort, and our focus will be on the consumer teaching, right? And so, because that, but I want to help at all of the different levels, organizational level, doctor level, consumer, direct to consumer level, because those things are all needed.
Yeah, no, 100%. And there's some exciting things to unpack in the next couple of months, which you and I know that's coming on board, and we're excited to let everyone know a little bit more, a little bit later on. Got a couple of questions though. So first one's actually not so much a question. Rebecca mentions, I've regained my health and lost over 50 pounds over the last 3 years. I found that every step along the way, I was able to achieve small victories. These small victories have accumulated to where I am today. My advice is to celebrate every little victory, no matter how small. Do you agree with this? Now, before you answer that, again, I've been lucky enough to see what goes on in your clinic, and I know that when people hit a certain milestone at your clinic, you and your team actually gather around and you ask them, you get them to recommend or to nominate a song, and you and your whole team sing a song to them, right?
Right. So you can celebrate victories or milestones in many different ways. And at medical clinics, I observed, watching other doctors and having been the president of the Obesity Medicine Association, I've met a lot of other doctors who do this, and they might celebrate with a gold star or or other. I brought in what was in my background with music and piano, keyboard playing. And so, yeah, we have, I think I think I missed playing piano a lot. And so I thought, well, I'll just do it at work and we'll celebrate. So it is kind of remarkable to see, I'll say, it's clinic policy that when you lose 50 pounds or you're in the program for a year, you get a song. And then people, a song, what do you mean? Well, there happens to be a piano in the break room, and there is around the hall. I put one in there, and you choose a song, and then we play it for you. And it turns out on the internet, you can get the music for just about any song. Yes, there's some I haven't found, but usually you can, often for free. And so I'll go down and rustle together the other doctors and nurses and staff, the pharmacists, and trainees as well. So the first month out of the year when the interns are just starting, they're just kind of shocked that they're at a clinic and they're going to the break room and singing a song for somebody. But the unique thing is not, I don't choose the song. Like you said, people nominate it. So I ask, choose a song that's meaningful for you. And it's amazing what people will come up with. I mean, it might be as religious, like Amazing Grace or some hymn, and or it might be as I remember one couple chose the song that they had on their honeymoon, so we played it anyway. So yeah, in our clinic we celebrate, but actually. As a practitioner, I do a lot of cheerleading, celebration as part of my job of being supportive. And I want people to feel good when they leave this doctor's visit. And in fact, some people tell me, I don't usually go to the doctor and feel good after leaving. And, that's all, it's not by coincidence. It's because so many people are doing better, having results, and a lot of people are their worst critics. I only lost 5 pounds this month. I'm like, well, actually, that's right on track, and keep it up. And so you can celebrate. You can celebrate it at home in different ways. But it's an individual thing. Some people want those milestones. Others would just as soon have me keep track of those things. And so there's that whole range of things to do. The piano and the music was just kind of on a whim. I started it, and but it's been a good thing to do.
Yeah. Romy asks, and this is something that I kind of tend to agree with, but she says she's heard about the Kraft test is a reliable way to predict type 2 diabetes up to 10 years. Is this true? I have an opinion on that, but what do you think?
Yeah, so Dr. Kraft, C-R-A-F-T, was kind of an under-recognized physician of the ilk of the mindset, like Jerry Reven, that glucose and insulin were really important, and as or if not more important than the cholesterol thing, kind of a theme that we've caught on and developed. And he measured, lots and lots of people with blood glucoses and insulin. You have to keep in mind that these people were all eating carbs. So it brings in that situation of, does the measurements when you don't eat carbs reflect the same risk as the measurements when you are eating carbs? And no one really knows for sure.
So I have a last question, and from Martin. Martin says, I find that I measure everything, blood sugar and ketones daily, blood lipid panels and HbA1c, and fasting insulin twice a year. This has really helped me see the progress along the way, and I'm now at a stage where all my numbers are in the acceptable range. Do you think this is overboard?
Well, some people like measuring. There's no question about it. And I think it's important when things are changing. So early on, while I don't use I just don't have it available in my area easily, a continuous glucose monitor, and I don't recommend that everyone checks their ketone levels, their blood glucose levels. You can do that, and I think it's useful at first to get an idea if you're doing it right, especially if you're taking medications away. If I'm taking away diabetes medicines, I need people to measure their blood sugars, so blood glucose and blood ketone levels, or even urine ketone levels, can be useful. I don't need them, and if they're the same all the time, then I think it's overboard. So if you're checking the blood sugar and ketone every day, and it's pretty much always the same level, yeah, I think that's a little too much. I could save you a little money by recommending that you don't do it so often. So if the daily measures are pretty much the same, then the every 3 or 6 month measure of a hemoglobin A1C will give you the same information as the daily blood glucose. Although there's some, again, it's the tests when you're keto reflect the same information as when you're eating carbs, because there's some people that have elevated hemoglobin A1Cs and they are healthy and they don't have diabetes. So that's just kind of the advanced course. So yeah, in my recommendations, I don't think people need to check all these things every day. We still don't know what the optimal glucose and ketone levels are on a daily basis, so that people will come to me with daily or even multiple times a day numbers, and I just have to acknowledge I don't really know if you have to have a ketone level of 1.5 or 0.5 or in the blood. And so just because we can measure it doesn't mean we know what to do with the information. But they can be helpful at first to make sure you're doing it right. And then, of course, if you're taking away medication safely, I do use those kinds of monitoring tools. But so I guess the daily measurement, if you're at your steady state, meaning that it's not changing a lot from day to day, then yeah, I think that's overboard. But the measurements of every 6 months or so getting it checked is a useful tool. But and that's not overboard. Although after a while, if it's always normal, even at the doctor's office every 6 months, then why would you need to check it? So that there were interesting essays about how just because we can measure things doesn't mean we ought to. Until there's better science wrapped around the biohacking daily measure, things like that, I am still kind of holding off and saying it may not be worth all that extra effort.
I'm with you. Eric, as always, it is an absolute honor and a pleasure to be chatting with you, and thank you so much. And I'm sure that this information will be very, very helpful to some people. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to see future videos, you can find us on our YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under the name of Adapt Your Life. And if you have subscribed on our YouTube channel, please hit that notification bell so you can be alerted the next time a video comes out. Next week, we're going to be chatting about foods to avoid on a low-carb diet. So join us next Wednesday for another episode of Conversations with Dr. Westman. So this is Glenn Finkel and Eric Westman signing off on another Conversations with Dr. Westman. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.